take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. Hopefully you can see this presentation on my screen. I'm about to start it. If you have any feedback on it afterwards, I'd love to hear it. This is the inaugural version of this PowerPoint. So I hope it goes well. As Laura said, please hang on to any questions for the end. Hopefully we'll get to a lot of them. I think we'll cover some that have been sent in already. And Allison Fass and Ashley Webster, who I work with here, also may chime in if I seem to be forgetting anything. So here we go. One question I think that comes up a lot is, you know, how does Inc. social media work? So before we even get to what you can do on your own platforms, Inc. is on a lot of different platforms, but we are most active on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and
Steph?
recently, yeah.
Steph, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut in. This is Jen. I don't see the PowerPoint, the share screen.
Oh, wait. Did that work?
No. Okay, so now it says
Got it?
Yep, we see it now.
All right, I'm going back to my first slide.
Great,
So you can see my cover. All right, good?
Yes, it's great.
Thank you. All right, so we are most active on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and recently Snapchat. I think you guys have probably heard this a lot, but so we have all of our posts go automatically out to Twitter anytime between immediately and 7 hours now after publishing, and that depends on the language and how quickly our social flow, which is what we use to post, thinks that will fit into the conversation. It depends on how many other posts are in the queue at that time, and if we're in the office, it also depends on timeliness. Of those tweets that go out on the Inc. account, the ones that perform really well, and usually that's around 200 clicks is what we look at, but it depends on the day and the tweet, will be tweeted again, and that might be once, it might be multiple times. Some of you may see the same tweets coming up over and over again, and that's because they keep doing well. On Facebook, we put about 27 to 30 posts per day. You will note that that is not as many articles as we publish on the site. So we look for a few specific things when we're putting them out onto Facebook. I know that's a huge question, and we'll get to that in more detail in a little bit. And we do about the same number of posts on LinkedIn. What does well there tends to be more what you would expect: articles about job hunting, management, anything with a big name company. LinkedIn tends to actually like those posts more because there are a lot of employees or people who've worked there in the past. And then our Instagram account mostly works with print magazine content because we've got great photos from our art department there. And our Snap account, which if you don't follow us yet, check it out. We're at Inc. We do weekly takeovers with different interesting entrepreneurs around the country. So one thing you may have wondered is how well does a post on each platform do? So this is just looking at August for the average clicks per post. You can see that Facebook averages out the best. LinkedIn actually isn't great, even though we have a lot of followers there. And the range of clicks is also the largest on Facebook. So I just want to underline that getting an article up onto Facebook is no guarantee of getting clicks. It can vary wildly depending on the headline, depending on the time of day, depending on what else is going out on in the world. Just as a note, we'll make sure you have access to this entire presentation afterwards. So if you want to come back and look at these numbers later, you'll have it. So the big question that we've gotten a lot of questions about, how do we pick what goes onto Facebook? And this is something we look at a lot. So this is kind of a lot of words on this page, but this is most of the recipe. So, you know, there's editorial judgment and a knowledge of what our readers usually click on. We look at this weekly, daily. When something is trending or not working that we had different expectations on, we look at it right away. Timeliness and the content mix of our overall Facebook page also is relevant. So when something big is happening in the world, we often see a lot of you guys post on it, which is great, but we can't put up, 6 posts right in a row on the same topic, or our Facebook fans will be confused and angry. The quality of the post matters. Facebook fans tend to complain in the comments if they click on something and they don't feel like they got a good value. So if it's a post that really feels meaty, that feels useful, and that feels interesting, that's gonna get priority. Related to that, if our team learns something new from a post, that is something that makes it much more likely to get up there. One of Ink's strengths is inspiring people with great info, but sometimes it can be similar to what it's been in the past. So having something new is really exciting. The tweet is also a big part of what first flags a piece for us. So if the tweet that you put into the system is well thought out and does well, we'll see that perform well, and we'll say, okay, well, our Twitter fans liked it. Let's see if this might be something our Facebook fans will like. And we also look at if there's other traffic to the post. So if LinkedIn is sending a lot of traffic, if it gets into a newsletter, any of those things, if a post hasn't already gone up onto Facebook, make us take a look at it. We also pay attention to what's happening on other pages. So if there's a topic that's trending there, we might try it out. That doesn't always work. Something trending on a different page is no guarantee it will work on ours, but it's a thing we consider. And then kind of at the bottom of this list, Social Flow's algorithm does make recommendations, and we don't give that as much weight as these other things, but we look at it. So what can you do to get onto Ink's Facebook page more? This all starts with the headline. The better your headlines, the better the chance of the post just doing well overall. And if you use A/B testing, that can really help choose the strongest one. Number 2, as I mentioned, a strong tweet will really help. If the tweet does well, that's a big signal that we look at. One thing that is maybe an unusual suggestion, but works, we tend to see fewer articles published on Friday, which means that we have less to choose from when scheduling out our Facebook for Friday and also for the weekend. So there's just a smaller pool that you're in that day, so it's more likely to get onto Facebook. If you have a new angle on a popular topic, especially if it's a topic we've seen do well already, and then you have a fresh angle, that's a good way to think about it. And I just want whoever submitted the bribery question in advance to know that this was already in my presentation. I was already thinking about bribery, but it will not work. So what kinds of tweets can you put into on-page editor that will make the tweets do well and therefore the Ink team take notice for Facebook consideration? This is a little bit newer in terms of what works well on Twitter has changed in the time that I've been at Ink. So what we see working well now is almost Facebook style language on a tweet. Instead of repeating the headline, which isn't terrible, that can still work, but Twitter language that interacts with the headline, that's a little bit conversational, that's pretty similar to what you would do on Facebook, tends to work well. And adding something sort of personal to the headline to engage readers, to make them think about, is this something I want to share? Do I have a connection with this tweet? So that's a good way of thinking about it. One other thing is if you're A/B testing headlines, think about Twitter language that might work for either headline. If it only works for one and then that headline doesn't end up on the article, it can look a little bit weird. So these are some of the headlines that have done really well on our Facebook page, 25,000 clicks or higher just since June. You'll see that on the next page, I actually have the ones that are shared the most. But one thing that tends to work well on Facebook, and that is something that we like to see, is when people have a reason to tag their friends. we saw that a lot with Bill's Ruth Bader Ginsburg post, which you may have seen floating around. And there were a few different groups that felt really motivated to either share it or to tag people they knew in the comments. And it was mothers were tagging their daughters, daughters were tagging their mothers, and lawyers were tagging other lawyers. All right, well, now you all know what I called this. There we are. So headlines and topics that connect to that. Another article that's listed on the most shared page is actually this bottom one here, the extraordinary reason exceptional people avoid mediocre friends. Everyone thinks that they have great friends, and everyone has a friend that they think is great. Or, you know, and so that gives people a reason to tag others there. Some other things that we see doing well, weird pet peeves or things that people have a strong opinion about, especially if there's kind of equal opinions on both sides. Specificity is pretty good. The workplace toxic combo has historically done well for us on Facebook, although if we get 30 columns on that, it may stop. So I'll just leave all these headlines here with you guys, but know that, again, as I said earlier, the information that we give you about what headlines and what topics work, all of that is given with the knowledge and the recommendations of the social team. So that's already baked into the advice that you're getting. And let's talk about images. This is Zipper Mouth. It's a photo that's appeared on a handful of Inc. articles in the past few years, and for some reason those articles tend to do pretty well, and we think it's because this image is so horrible looking that people scrolling through Facebook just stop out of horror and then are like, oh, that's a pretty good headline, let's click on it. So when you're picking up the images for your articles, just remember that in social media, these are appearing in a feed with a million other headlines, a million other photos. So don't try and choose something hideous necessarily, but think about, what will catch someone's eye, what stands out, is this colorful, or is this just a weird stock photo? So I wanted to approach the part of, how do you do your own social media from the perspective of, what would I do if I were an Inc. columnist? And that actually starts before you have a column to promote. You have to keep in mind that social media is social, it's ongoing. It's not just, if you're doing it well, it's not going to be just a tool to promote your own articles, but it's going to be a way to actually connect with the community, to interact with people, and to set yourself up as someone who has good recommendations, good advice, good ideas. So to do that, you really have to figure out, what kind of thought leader do I want to be? Who do I want reading me? Who doesn't read me, who I'd like to get to read me, and what have they come to expect from me? What do I want them to expect from me? And what kind of value am I giving them if they choose to follow me? So this is kind of a made up number, but I like it. I feel like, maybe 1/3 of your social activity is promoting your own articles. This is certainly flexible depending on what you're doing, but I think it's a pretty safe way to think about it. So 1/3 of the time, share your own stuff, but don't just, hit the share button on Inc. Tell people what inspired you to write it, or, give them something extra. And then another 1/3 of your time, recommend topics or recommend articles that are in the area that you are focused on. If you want to be an expert in a field, who are you reading? What made you stop and think? You don't even necessarily have to agree with the things. You could post a question in your tweet or disagree in your tweet. And I shouldn't just say tweet. This is actually for any social media you want to be on in a business way, but Twitter should just probably have the most volume. And then another 1/3 of the time, interact, answer people's tweets, take part in activities that are happening on Twitter. If someone replies to your tweet, answer them or like their tweet. Another benefit of interacting is that if you're on Twitter, you've probably noticed that you'll put a great tweet out there and then nothing happens. No one does anything with it, and that's disappointing. So if you can be the one that does interact with the tweets that other people are excited about, they will like you more. And then I know this doesn't actually add up, but about 10% of it, or woven through all the rest of it, like, be yourself. You don't have to be straight business all the time. Be a person, be a professional person. It's still kind of your brand there, but it's cool if you have a sports team that you're regularly throwing in there, or something that you care about, and it'll help you find an unlikely audience and humanize you and make you more than just someone that tweets about marketing or whatever. All right, so assuming that that's how you approach all of your social media, here's what I would say very specifically for a specific article. If it were me, I would probably schedule 3 tweets, and I would write them all differently. I'd schedule them at different times. So you want to get like the morning Twitter people, the nighttime Twitter people, the awake in Europe Twitter people, maybe one the next day or one over the weekend. Include handles of anyone mentioned in the article if it's flattering. If it's not flattering, maybe don't include their handle. Tag at Inc. A number of you asked how you can get retweeted by Inc. And I have a Twitter list with your handles on it, but if you don't tag at Inc., I won't see your tweet about your story. So make sure to do that. If you do it when I'm at work, that is the time I am most likely to retweet it. And then don't just put this all out there, but actually measure it, keep an eye on it, and learn from what you do on one article, what you should do on the next one. When Inc. tweets out your automatic tweet, retweet it. You can add commentary to it or not. I probably wouldn't, because then it will appear as just an Inc. tweet in other people's feeds, and they may not even realize it came from you, which just is a good way of catching someone's eye differently. If people reply to your tweet, interact appropriately with their responses, and if it's something that's going to be evergreen, keep it going, save it, tweet it again a month later, get it into that rotation. A few more Twitter tips. So follow the right people. I like to look at people I admire and just check out who they're following and add some follows from there. I already mentioned this part, but really flatter people's bad jokes and awkward tweets. If you can interact with those, that's where people will be like, yes, someone made me feel not bad about myself. Make sure your profile looks good. Actually, a lot of you have good Twitter profiles and LinkedIn profiles and everything, but I just flagged Joseph Steinberg here as one where I think he does a particularly nice job of saying who he is, what you're going to get when you follow him. Joseph, I don't know if you're on the call or not, but his pinned tweet actually goes to his Inc. Columns, all of them, which is good. Pinned tweets can get a lot of attention. And his header also kind of goes with his brand and shows that he's a thought leader. So that's one to check out. And then be smart with your hashtag use. You can definitely join in conversations using them. If you go overboard, you will. I think it looks spammy. People have different thresholds of tolerance for hashtags. I think if you've got over 3, you may be going too far. All right, so that's what I would do on Twitter. On LinkedIn, there are kind of 3 things you can do. You can share the link itself. Just like on Twitter, I would say make sure you tell people why you wrote the article, what you hope to get from it, maybe ask a question, and make sure to interact with anyone in the comments who answers it. So that's really just like a link share. The other thing you can do is write a LinkedIn post that's actually native to LinkedIn. And to do that, this is something that LinkedIn itself recommends as a platform that people do if they're writers. And so you'd give an intro to the piece, why you wrote it, a little bit longer than you might do if you're just sharing a link. And then say, to read the rest of this, read it on inc.com. And then once you once the exclusionary period on Inc. is up with an article, you can actually even repost the entire piece on LinkedIn. I would recommend making sure you have lots of internal links back to your other work on Inc. or wherever. And I also think that a read more from me at Inc. list at the bottom is just a no-brainer thing to include. Like you can't lose with that. And then in terms of how often to post, this really, again, is something I'd experiment with, see how valuable it is to you. But I think, maybe around 2 posts per month that are native to LinkedIn, and share a couple of your own articles per week. But don't forget to be sharing other useful things as well that were not written by you. And here is a Justin Bariso example of a post that he put directly onto LinkedIn. So he kind of prefaces an article about Elon Musk with a couple of paragraphs and an excerpt, and says, it's published in full on my Inc. column. You can read it here. And then this is what he has at the bottom. So he's got links to 4 other articles that he wrote on Inc., as well as a little bit about himself. So if the people are already there, just, try and get them to click on something else that they might like if they liked what they just read. And then this is from Jeff Hayden. He actually reposted his entire article after it had been on Inc. for a while. A shout out to the amazing linking in the first paragraph here. When you're putting links into an article, this isn't a social media thing, but if you're linking, make sure you're using phrases like this where people might actually click on the phrase. Think of links like mini headlines. But he has something similar at the bottom of his post as well. All right, and then Facebook is tricky in a personal way. There's 2 ways of doing this. There's you might have a professional page, or mostly use your page professionally. And then if you're like me, you're more of a friends and family user on Facebook. So for those of you that are using it professionally, I would treat it kind of like LinkedIn, and share a link to your new post, share links to other posts that are useful for people in your field or who might be following you for advice. In your about section, make sure it's easy to find you on other platforms, any websites you're at, make sure your about section is useful. Pinning a post to the top of your page, either a popular post or something directional that says, read all my Inc. columns here, or, visit my website here, I'm doing this event. And that can be a pinned page. Do note that organic reach on a Facebook page is probably not going to be great. But if you think about it, not just as something for reach, but also something that's like a professional business card. If someone searches for you on Facebook, this is what they find. So make sure that it shows you off well. For those of you that are more of friends and family Facebook users, you can still promote your pieces there. This honestly comes down to just how comfortable you are doing it and how what specifically you write about. And so I think, don't go overboard here. I don't really love it when my friends, post too much about what they're doing over and over again. But if this were me, I would say like 1 article a week if it felt right. But I would just let your gut be your guide here. If you are going to post, I think, again, trying to either ask people a question to engage them, or to tell them why you wrote it or why you're excited about it, or, why are you sharing it with them? Make sure that's clear. And that should help how they interact with it. And, it's on Facebook, as with all social media, building a presence takes time and energy and commitment. So if you have a book, if you're a speaker, it can be worth creating a fan page or a professional page, but if you're not using it kind of as part of this overall platform, it can also be a lot of work where you're not going to see a ton of immediate payoff, especially because of how Facebook can act with the organic traffic. If you want to be on Instagram, you're probably not going to see a lot of Inc. traffic there, but it can just be fun for you to use, fun as a branding tool. Make sure you're using hashtags. They're on Instagram, they're really necessary. Using Instagram stories or Instagram's live feature can be useful in terms of getting your profile, like it'll pop up immediately at the top when you have new content there. So it makes you much more visible. And then quotes are kind of an easy fallback thing if you're trying to build up a following there. They'll never be the most unique thing in the world, but they can be popular. They're safe. And here's just a list of, this is not in any way comprehensive, but it's just a variety of things you could try that would either be useful or fun on social. So something like Hootsuite or TweetDeck for scheduling, Bitly so that you can create trackable links and see what people are actually clicking on. For example, in your LinkedIn post, you might use these to see if you're actually getting any click-through on those links that you've embedded. Live video features, not just on Instagram, but on Facebook, on Periscope. These will absolutely not make sense or be comfortable for everyone, but some of you may want to try it, and it's totally worth testing it out. Doing it once doesn't mean you have to stick to doing it, but make sure there's some reason that, some takeaway that your audience would get from it. Social Rank is a new app I just got a demo on, and I thought it was kind of cool. Their free version will just show you who your highest value Twitter top followers are, ranked in a few different ways. And you can do searches for followers that are interested in certain topics. So there are other programs like this too. And if you want to get a breakdown of who's already following you, it can be fun to dig into. Our art department likes Afterlight, Snapseed as the two main photo apps they use. I also have Picly, where you can add text over images if you're putting a quote onto Instagram. If you're big Instagram users, you probably already know Boomerang, which makes the videos on Instagram that go backwards and forwards. Hype Type is a cool one for making Instagram stories. And verification on Twitter is helpful to have. It's not something that we can help with, but you basically, at this point in time, any user has to ask Twitter themselves for it. This is a link to how you would do that. If you can convince them that people are being confused with you, that's helpful. But that link kind of has all the details on how you would need to request it. All right, we're almost at the question part. Sorry to just be talking at you. So 2 last tips. You don't have to be everywhere. If all of this sounds like way too much work or like you don't understand the platforms, you don't have to do it. Twitter and LinkedIn, I think, make the most sense for what you all do. But I do recommend, if you're not on one, get your name on it, just own it, and send a link to where people should find you. If Stephanie Meyer, vampire novelist, had done that, I would not have nearly so many Twitter followers. But she doesn't have a Twitter account, and therefore all her followers think it's me. And then second is be patient. Like it's slow to build up an organic following that's real and legitimate. And so all of this may not have the immediate payoff you hope for, but if you're consistent over time, it will. So questions, I'm going to go first to the people that submitted them in advance with a few that I didn't think I would get to. Sorry, I'm just going to go through these to reward people for asking, and then I'll open it up. So how is social media handled over the weekend, especially for news and breaking events? We don't have anyone working on the weekend, so your auto tweet will go out. Something is generally not going to get scheduled to Facebook unless someone happens to sign on to their stuff and see it. If something is really, really urgent, we may do that, but for the most part, Inc. is not a breaking news site. If there is an event that you know about in advance and you want to schedule something in advance, talk to your editor on a Friday morning or before that, and we may be able to schedule it over the weekend, but we need to know about it in advance. Best practices for targeting and engaging with business leaders. I would just say don't be spammy. Try and be useful in general, and just act like a normal person would if you were interacting with them. It may not immediately get their attention. They may not even be looking at that. A lot of people, if they're verified, may not even see non-verified actions on their tweets. But if they ask a question, be there to answer it with useful information, and just treat it as naturally and humanly as possible. Another tip that I have is I actually like to follow someone on social media, usually on Twitter, before I cold email them, so that they're sort of primed with my name. I don't know if that really works, but I like to think it does. The handful of topics that get the biggest click-through rates, I mentioned this before, but this is really, the stuff that we tell you about headlines is that's where those requests come from. So just pay close attention to that information and know that it is all given to you with the blessing of the social media team. And we did kind of get to hashtag practices. I didn't think we would, but yeah, I would personally limit it at 3. We don't use them on the Inc. Handle because we're trying to lead conversations, not get into them. But on a personal handle, I think it can be useful. And if you can find narrower hashtags, I think that those often tend to be more valuable. All right, so more question time.
Oh yeah, so Steph, we got a question from Sonia Thompson, and she's asking, when replying to an Inc. tweet that's been retweeted, should we include the Inc. handle when we respond?
You can. There's no reason to delete it. We probably won't reply to it, but go ahead and leave it on there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it might just be great to see the action that what's happening on Twitter. So that's the reason to leave it on there.
Yeah, there's no real reason to take it off, and it's an extra step to take it off.
Okay, yeah. Cool. And Peter Gaska is asking, is there a proper protocol for favoring or retweeting posts from others who share and tag your content on Inc.? For example, can you retweet or retweet too many, assuming that you only like or retweet accounts that seem legit?
I would think about it from the perspective of your followers. So if a lot of people have shared your article and you retweet all of them, the people that follow you are now getting blasted with all of those retweets. Mm-hmm. So I would like everything that's positive, and I would reply to people, but I would think about retweets in the same way that you think about your own tweets, which is you want to have a good mixture, and not necessarily just hit people 20 times in a row with an article that you just wrote.
Okay. Great. Well, super. People might still be typing in some questions here. So meantime, I would just want to add something about what we were talking about reposting on LinkedIn after the rights lift after 2 weeks after publications.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I also should say, Laura is the authority on that. I don't know the details exactly on what's allowed, but
Well, I would really make sure that we say we want you to change the headline so you're not competing on Google with your Inc. headline. So definitely change the headline and do not use the Getty image. A lot of columnists, for some reason, think that they can use the Getty images, but they don't have rights to those. And also always include a link back to the piece on Inc., preferably if it's if you can get a canonical tag into the platform that you're reposting on. So those are just 3 things that we ask for people who are reposting their content elsewhere to make sure that they do. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in. But so meantime, we have a couple more questions in. Steph, I'm not sure you're actually looking at the chat. I'll just read them off if that's okay.
No, I don't know how to get back to the chat. This is
okay, great. I'll just read them out loud then too. So Tracy is asking, how should we handle trolling or aggressive responses to the tweet of an article?
Ignore it. If it's like really spammy, on Twitter you can report it as spam. It doesn't necessarily work, but for the most part, just ignoring trolls is better than feeding them.
So starve the trolls. Okay, that's good. Bill Murphy is asking, do you have any thoughts on engaging in the comments with people on Facebook's or LinkedIn accounts?
We have not seen that engaging angry people who haven't read the article makes them more likely to read the article. So I think if there's a chance to have a good discussion with someone, it's useful. But if people have clearly just reacted to the headline or are ranting about something else, you responding to them is not going to improve the situation. So I think if you can be useful and they seem thoughtful, you can. I don't think anyone has to. Our readers don't comment on all, they comment on some percentage of our Facebook posts, but when they do, they have their own thing going. So yeah, it depends on the tone of it.
Okay.
I would prefer that you not go in and just enrage people if you can avoid it.
Yeah. How about getting story ideas, say, from the comments and Facebook?
Yeah, definitely. Again, not all of our Facebook posts get comments, but sometimes the comments can go in a really interesting direction you haven't thought about, or really inspire conversation and make you think, maybe there's another piece here. Maybe there's another 2 pieces here. So it's good to follow it, but don't feel like you have to answer if someone's, not understanding your point.
Okay. And here's a question from Yoram, and I'm not sure I quite get it, but maybe you do. He's saying, I get my images for non-ink articles from Adobe stock, but many of the contributors contribute the same images in both places, so I end up using the same image, but through another source that I pay for. Is that ringing?
Oh, I think
Maybe
that may be
Yoram
in response to the LinkedIn reposting.
Okay.
So maybe the contributor, you can actually use the same image, but not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Yoram's actually saying, it's just it's an explanation of why you might see the same.
Yeah.
Image. Okay, perfect. Great. All right, and Maya Hushan says, what's the optimum frequency to post the same article on LinkedIn and Twitter? She says, I've tried 2 times per day for 4 days in 1 week. Is that too much or just right?
It somewhat depends on how big your following is. If you have only, if you have 200 people following you, that might be overwhelming for them. But I would just keep an eye on how it's being received and don't use the exact same tweet every time. Keep it interesting. So try different versions. I think that might be a little bit too much in general. I think 2 times on the first day is no problem. And then I might go down to like once per day or once every other day for a little bit from there.
Okay. Also,
keep an eye on how people react to it.
Yeah. Okay. So if people aren't reacting to it, don't do it anymore?
Yeah, if you're not getting anything out of it. Also, it depends how much other stuff you tweet. If those are your only tweets, that probably is going to just look weird if someone comes to your profile and they only see that. But if you're having a really good mix of sharing other articles and interacting with people, it'll fit in better.
Okay. So how about using Facebook for column ideas? What's your best advice on that?
That's an interesting question. Facebook is a really good demonstration of what people like talking about. It's not a good place to find anything newsy because often, as I'm sure you've all noticed when writing about newsier topics, what hits people that don't follow news, it happens a few days later. So that tends to be what Facebook shows you is what people are talking about three days or so after people in media or talking about it. But when you see a lot of comments happening on something, you know that it's struck some kind of nerve, and that can certainly give you ideas or for other angles of on a topic.
Good. Okay, great. Well, great. I think we're out of questions right now. It's 1:44. So unless we have any questions pop in right now, I think we should wrap it. But I'd also just want to let everybody know that we are recording this session, so it will be available for everyone. And we'll send it out as soon as we get it up onto our YouTube page, on our private YouTube. So, all right. I guess that's it. Well, thanks everybody. And thank you so much, Steph. That was really, really informative.
Good. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have more questions, totally send them through Jen or Laura. We're always happy to answer more because, you know, a rising social tide lifts all page view boats, as they say.